Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist worldwide.
Next weekend, the weekend of July 20th. If you're in the area of Denver, Colorado, you got to come join us for the Colorado Secular Conference. I'm going to be out there looking forward to seeing some gorgeous Colorado scenery. I'm going to be out there. Catherine Stewart's part of the lineup. Sean Faircloth from the Richard Dawkins Foundation is going to be there and more. And the tickets are only $20 for the whole thing. It's going to be an amazing day on the 20th in Denver, Colorado. To find out more or to get your tickets, it's cosecularconference.org. It's going to be a busy fall season. I see Skepticons coming up, doing an event in Pennsylvania. We've got a Boston conference on the way. There's almost too many to keep up with. I try to keep them listed if possible on my website, thethinkingatheist.com. And so if you ever want to find out if an event is coming near your neck of the woods, you can always log on and take a look at the itinerary and take a look. It's a lot easier than remembering, because remembering is getting harder and harder with every single year. Remembering is getting extremely hard. This is what my life is like. I saw a posting online that just said, you're getting older. And it listed several symptoms, including this. You're getting older when everything hurts and what doesn't hurt doesn't work. You're getting older when the gleam in your eyes is from the sun hitting your bifocals. When you feel like the night after and you haven't even been anywhere. You're getting older when your little black book contains names ending in MD. When your children start to look middle-aged. When a dripping faucet causes an uncontrollable urge to go to the bathroom. You're getting older when you know all the answers, but nobody asks you the questions. When you look forward to a nice, dull evening. When your favorite part of the newspaper is 25 years ago today. When you turn out the lights to save money instead of to be romantic. You're getting older when your knees buckle and your belt won't. When you regret all the times you resisted temptation. You're getting older when you're startled the very first time that somebody calls you an old-timer. You're getting older when you can't stand people who are intolerant. When the best part of your day is over, when the alarm clock goes off in the morning. When you burn the midnight oil, but you do it at 9 p.m. When your back goes out more often than you do. When a fortune teller offers to read your face. When the little gray-haired lady that you help across the street is your wife. Finally, when you sink your teeth into a steak and they stay there, you're getting older. Now, this is not going to be a depressing show about, oh my God, my body's falling apart, I'm getting old. And by the way, those of you who are young people who are listening right now going, oh, I can't relate to this at all. I feel like I'm going to live forever. I've got decades and decades in front of me. I mean, come on. Shut up. Just shut up. Because we were all there. We were all invincible like you are. Young and skinny and full of vigor and energy and unbounded enthusiasm. The world was our oyster. We were absolutely unstoppable. And we were going to live forever. We had a 30-inch waist. We had all of our hair. We went to bed at 3 in the morning and got up at 8 without any problems. 6 o'clock if you're going to school. We used to like the midnight movie. Oh, it's a midnight showing? Sign me up. I'm in. We could eat pizza at every meal. We could eat pizza all the time. As many pieces as we want because we used to have a metabolism. Yeah, I know exactly what you're thinking. You look in the mirror and you say, I'm young and pretty and I'm going to enjoy it while I can. Well, I think you absolutely should. There's a saying that says that youth is wasted on the young. And what that's trying to say is by the time you have the life experience to truly digest what it's all about. And perspective is pretty major, right? And perspective, in my opinion, normally does not come when you're 18, 21, 25, sometimes even 30. Sometimes you got to put 4 or 5 decades in before you really start to see big picture. I'm convinced of it. Well, by then, you're not 18 and pretty anymore, at least not like you were. I see photographs of myself in my early days. I've got some old photos of me on the radio. Who the hell is that young skinny person? That baby-faced young thing. Who is that guy? I don't even recognize him. I just saw a video of myself at the 2013 Oklahoma Free Thought Convention. I look like I'm storing nuts in my cheeks. Well, you know, Seth, you're only as young as you feel. Shut up. Age is a state of mind. Shut up. All right, some of that's true. Some of that's true. We're going to talk about the phenomenon of getting older. We're going to talk about kind of how it changes your perspective. We're really going to celebrate life. I really am. I'm going to poke a lot of fun at the whole how the body changes, how the mind changes, how perception changes. Yeah, we're going to go there. But the truth of it is that it's a celebration of life. And those who have followed this show know how I feel about living a life where there is no heaven and no hell and no paradise in the sky, and this is our one shot on this rock. And if we get 8 full decades, we're doing better than the billions upon billions upon billions of people who were never born to begin with, right? The scenario didn't allow for them to be born. We are tremendously fortunate to have a life here. What was that saying? I'm trying to think of who said it. The ones that die are lucky, because it means they were given the opportunity to live to begin with. When so many others were never born, never even had this shot. That you and I draw breath today is just awesome. And every day is a gift. Pardon the cliche. Speaking of Oklahoma Free Thought, I had an email in from Ann, who was at the event. She said, I had the pleasure of meeting you at Free OK a couple weeks ago. I am what I consider to be a very young 60. As a baby boomer, I have no idea how or when this happened. It wasn't going to happen to us boomers. Anyway, when I left faith for reason about 7 years ago, I finally started feeling like a true adult. Not only was Sky Daddy gone, I started viewing my relationships with others through the lens of reality. All the folks at my former church we attended for over 30 years, a liberal, not fundamentalist one, still don't get it, and seem to be afraid to know the real me as a free thinker. I'm sure they think a couple major tragedies in my life turned me off of God, but that wasn't it at all. Not one of them has asked me about my deconversion. It was always, we miss you at church, until that buzzline wore thin. When I responded that my address and phone number were the same and that my door was always open, nobody came or called. It was like they were afraid to know the mature, adult me. I'm sure that they think my abandonment of belief is some kind of pathology which has a dark secret at its core. It's no such thing. I just grew up. Wish I'd done it sooner. Keep up the good work, Seth. Ann, formerly of Duncan, Oklahoma. Used to have relatives down in Duncan, down there close to the Oklahoma-Texas border. Glad to hear from you, Ann, and thank you so much for the message. I occasionally have people sort of tweak me for mentioning my book. And I'll tell you, I do it for two reasons. The first is it's because it is my story. And I like the way I said it in the book, and I'll refer to it. The second reason is because I shamelessly would love the idea that people in this community would buy the book and support it. I really want to see it succeed. I think it's an encouraging book. Is it going to change the world? Hell no. Is it going to enlighten people who have been neck deep in the throes of debate their whole lives in this arena? Absolutely not. They're not who I'm talking about. This is a book that encourages people who have come out of religion or people who don't get how someone can buy any of this bullshit to begin with. And, people have asked me, well, how can I support the Thinking Atheist? And I always say, if you want to support TTA, I so appreciate it. If you want to, pick up the book. Oh, I'm shameless about it. It's a labor of love. And I receive a lot of messages from people who say, our childhoods were so much alike. Or I had one just this last week that said, I was a lifelong atheist. I couldn't figure out what was going on with these people, how they could buy any of the crap that was in the Bible. And your book actually showed me the power of childhood indoctrination. Anyway, it's called DECONVERTED, A Journey from Religion to Reason. In the introduction, I deal with getting older, and I'll just read it because, again, I like the way I said it the first time. You were never really saved to begin with. I hear this charge almost weekly. On my website, on YouTube, on Facebook. A passionate Christian reads my story and exclaims that nobody who'd experienced a legitimate encounter with the risen Savior could ever reject his love, his truth, and his gift of eternal life. I obviously wasn't ever a true believer. I missed a step. I did it wrong. Jesus never actually entered my heart. My religious upbringing, my salvation prayer, my baptism, my Bible-based education, my years as a Christian broadcaster, and my ultimate rejection of it all are null and void because I had been a counterfeit. Or perhaps I had truly believed. But nearing my 40s, I had lost my way. I was going through a phase. I was neck-deep in the throes of a midlife crisis. Family and friends might assert that instead of the sports car and hair plugs, I'd simply tried on a glamorous new worldview that's shocking, rebellious, edgy. It must make me feel like a teenager again. And they're probably convinced that after a few years of sowing my wild oats, feeling all vigorous and sexy, surely I'll get it out of my system. Well, living in this middle-aged skin, I can personally attest that there's nothing sexy about turning your life upside down at a time when some are considering early retirement. And unlike the flashy convertible, the trendy haircut, or trophy spouse, this particular phase isn't simply laughed off, brushed off, or ignored. Announcing you're an atheist is like dipping yourself in jet fuel and showing up for a candlelight church service. The crowd's convinced you're going up in flames, and they're terrified you'll take others with you. Some scatter, some attempt to cleanse you, and some just stand there and scream, "Save the children." This does not make one feel young and vigorous. It's the stuff of wrinkles and ulcers and sleepless nights, made worse by the constant attempts by others to excuse it all away. It's a fluke. You're deceived. You're ill. You're going through an angry time. It's a midlife crisis. The rationalizations are tossed at me constantly. At age 44, now 45, folks, I do feel myself changing in tangible ways. A few unwelcome age spots stare back at me from the bathroom mirror. I just caught 2 more last week. What the hell are those? Of course, I look at them. I'm like, cancer. No, they're just age spots, right? Are they harmless? I don't know. I'm going to get it looked at. My voice, already deep, sounds like an old Volkswagen till I've had my coffee. I said goodbye to my 32-inch waist years ago. My forehead is crawling northward, mocking the full, lustrous hairs that have no doubt found a new home in the shower drain. I'm more practical. I'm less impulsive. I walk rather than run. I want my food richer. I want my music softer. I drive the speed limit. I'd rather have an hour-long massage than play Dance Party on Xbox. I watch and enjoy documentaries. I avoid spicy foods. I vacation at home. And I love to sleep. Oh, I do. Oh, baby, it's 9:10, 9:15. Are you ready to turn in? Honey, it's only 9:15. I know, it's been a long day. Another side effect of getting older, when it comes to the ridiculous, the atrocious, and the insane, I found that my fuse has gotten much, much shorter. And as I look at religion with fresh eyes, I'm overwhelmed by public displays of the ridiculous, the atrocious, and the insane. Wild mythology, psychological abuse, bad science, corruption, blatant lies. I did a speech at Reason on the Rock last year, and I was saying that, as I grow older, I have become less and less tolerant of the ridiculous. And then I look at the world around me and I go, when did everything become so ridiculous? I'm just face-bombing 24 hours a day. What's going on? Have I just been blind? Or is it that perspective you're starting to see? You start to engage and absorb in ways that you weren't doing when you were 16. Right? Your priorities are different when you're a little bit older. By the way, I wanted to address something that Anne said. And you mentioned that people wonder if you had some kind of a trauma happen to you that caused you to fall away from the faith or reject God or whatever. And you said in that case it was not the case. But I've had several people come to me, and I've heard it in my own life. People say, something must have happened to you. You were traumatized. Meaning that I encountered someone who was religious or a doctrine or something that was God-related that was tainted or perverted or corrupted in some way, and it damaged me. Now, this is awesome, because what happens is religious people always say the other people are doing it wrong. Well, somebody was doing it wrong if you didn't buy into this. Whoever taught you was teaching falsehoods. Well, then you go talk to somebody else, and they say, no, that second person you spoke to, they're deceived. They're not preaching the word. No, that's false. They're doing it wrong. You go to a fourth person, and the fourth person says, the persons 1, 2, and 3 are all getting it wrong. Here, read this scripture. It's plain as day. Everybody else is doing it wrong. So you've got all of these people splintered out, and they're all saying, y'all are doing it wrong. Well, one of the equivocations they throw out, or one of the quote-unquote reasons they think you have fallen away from the faith, is because something traumatic happened in your life. And I used to dismiss that. I used to say, no, it wasn't traumatic. Nothing traumatic happened. And I was apologizing for it. And I've stopped that because in several cases with several people, many people I've met in my travels, there was something traumatic that happened. I've spoken to parents whose children were stripped away from them at a young age. I've spoken to people who had some major event, some major tragedy, some rattling of their cage that changed them forever. And I have come to really embrace the idea that sometimes when you're in a lazy, hazy, comfortable life, right? The 9-to-5 life, the punch the time clock life, when every day is almost a replica of the day before life, something traumatic is a legitimate rattling of your cage, a legitimate blowing of fresh air through the cobwebs. It's a moment of epiphany where you stop and focus and evaluate. Sometimes something traumatic in our lives does cause us to objectively examine what we were taught as children and decide yea or nay, do I accept it? Do I believe it? Will I accept it? Will I live it? Or will I walk away? And if somebody says, well, something must have happened to you, you were just traumatized. Well, quite frankly, you can look at them in the eye and say, actually, it was at that moment when I had absolute clarity, or I was at least focused on all of this stuff in a way I had never been before. This trauma woke me up. It grabbed me by the shoulders and it shook me. And it was that moment that took me from passivity, where I was sitting on the sidelines, and it put me out on the field where I was going to just pick a side and I was going to go, I think it's a completely legitimate thing. And anyway, and you brought that to light, and for some reason I felt the need to sort of expound on it just a little bit. As we talk about getting older, let's see if we have any nibbles on the switchboard. Area code 615. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hi, I'm going to call myself Carlos.
You call yourself whatever you want, brother. Carlos, it's good to meet you. What's going on, man?
I'm still kind of a closet atheist work. But anyway.
Well, hang on just a second. Why are you closeted? Is it because you're surrounded by religious family and friends? I mean, do you live in...
Oh, yeah.
You live under a Mormon temple or something? I mean, what's going on?
No, I was raised Seventh-day Adventist from age 12, and I even went to seminary. So, it's all I knew until, I don't know, a few years ago I started looking at other things. And,
how old were you at the time? How old were you when you started to shake the tree and see what happened?
Well, it was a very, very long journey. I mean, it actually started when I was going to seminary, my undergrad. When I saw the inner workings of what went on with the so-called ministers and, the leaders, many experiences that made me question my decision to pursue a life career in ministry. I thought that was it. There was nothing else for me but being a minister. But there were many things that made me question that decision. And then I started questioning some of my church's doctrines. And whenever I questioned them, I was just told to, that's the way it is, and you have to accept it. And that's the end of it. So
you're not the first one who's gone to seminary, and it's actually had the reverse effect. If you followed the story of Bart Ehrman, he went to Moody Bible Institute, and now if he's not an atheist, he's a hard agnostic.
He's very close. Yeah, he's very close.
Studying the Bible does screw up a person's faith sometimes, doesn't it, Carlos?
Yeah.
Well, what did you have for us today?
Well, I was calling about, you read the list of you getting old is, and I was wondering if you like being around older or old people. Does that mean you're getting old? I was, from a very young age, I loved hanging around the older folks and listening to their stories and how it was growing up. Now I find myself telling my kids, when I was growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm only 38.
When I was young, when I was a kid, or you have to explain technology to them. Well, you see, back then, we had transistor radios. And the kids just look at you like you're insane.
Yeah. When I tell my kids that I actually had cassette tapes, they were like, really? They rarely know what a CD is. So, and when I
those kids grew up,
like, whoa.
They have no idea what it's like not to be able to cook anything in the microwave, right? You and I grew up in an era where if you wanted a baked potato, you threw it in the oven and you waited like an hour and a half.
Exactly. Oh, we recently moved and we have no microwave at the new place that we're at. Oh. And they can't function.
No, it's impossible.
It's like the world has come to a halt.
How can you live under these conditions, Carlos? It's just horrifying. It's just horrifying. That's awesome. Anything else for me before I move on, Carlos?
No, I like to just call some other time, just talk a little bit more about my experience from being a Seventh-day Adventist to almost completely throwing everything out. I mean, I still have my doubts, but, I consider myself more between an agnostic and an atheist than a Christian, as I used to consider myself before.
Yeah.
So,
well, let me encourage you with two things, Carlos, okay? Well, actually, three. First of all, come out on your timing. Don't ever feel pressured by another atheist or even by yourself to go out and broadcast it before you're ready. The second thing is that none of us set out to, I'd say almost none of us set out to become atheist. We didn't wake up one day and go, I'm going to become an atheist. Yeah. We didn't go out to prove atheism. What we did was we simply followed the chain of evidence. We looked at the facts. We looked at what science and history support. We looked at things objectively, and atheism came as a result of that. And you're not going out to become atheist or agnostic. You're on a journey to find out what is true And that may put you in the atheist or agnostic category when it's all said and done. But your ultimate goal is truth. The final thing I want to encourage you with is, and some people are going to crucify me for this, but don't get hung up on labels. You know, some people are going to be like, well, you're actually an atheist. Oh, no, you're actually an agnostic. Well, you're an agnostic atheist. I see people chew each other to ribbons over these labels. Look, in the grand scheme of things, who gives a shit? There are some people who say it's unknowable, or they aren't ready to take a hard atheist stand, even though they may not really believe, and they call themselves agnostic. Good for you. Whatever. And there are other people who say they're absolutely convinced it's all a bunch of crap and there is no God. They say I'm a hard atheist. I say good for you. What I don't like is when we're so busy branding each other with labels that we lose track of the fact that we're all on a quest for truth, and this movement needs to be supporting itself.
That's really what started it all. It's like, just examining the evidence and just kind of finding out a lot of it is it's not what I thought it was.
I didn't wake up and say, I'm going to become an atheist. I woke up and I said, you know what, I'm going to read the Bible and see what's going on here. And 18 months later, holy shit, I'm an atheist. I mean, that's how it happens. And so when someone comes after me and tells me that I'm on a mission to prove atheism, I always say, absolutely not. I'm on a quest to find out what the evidence supports, and my atheism is a result of that quest. So, Carlos, I do wish you the best, and I thank you for listening and supporting the show, and I hope to talk to you again soon, okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, take care. We get some, I don't mind labels. Sometimes you need a label to be able to define what it is. I get that. What I don't like is when people come after each other with a measure of malice because someone else doesn't fit into their label that they think they should be. Well, actually, if you're going to be a true skeptic, you need to be an atheist instead of an agnostic. Well, I don't necessarily buy into that. Everybody's on kind of a different journey. They've got a little bit of a different take on it, but we're all after reason. We're all after the evidence. And I think that larger goal needs to remain a focus. Let's support each other. Christian in St. Louis sent me a message. He said, when I was a child and very much involved in the church, I remember having a fear one night that I would die. This terrified me. Ironically, it was because of that classic Christian bedtime prayer. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Wait, what? Die in my sleep? This was shocking. I was afraid. Old things died. I was getting older. I would one day die. And so I said the prayer every night well into high school to try to stop it. However, I kept getting older. I look back on that now and smile at the innocence of the realization that me and everyone else is always getting older. The philosophy that I follow talks about stages in life, 7 in total from birth to death. The 4th stage is essentially the midlife crisis. However, that description is inaccurate, Christian says. At this stage, the person's deciding to break with what the family expects or go their own way. They're also beginning to rediscover that childlike joy and innocence, but with literally knowing what you wish you did then. It's also about accepting the mistakes of your past. I've often questioned myself about relationships and how I was wronged, only to look back on them now and see the nuances, the things that I missed because I couldn't, or more accurately, wouldn't see what I was doing wrong. I feel that many people who leave religion do this. How could I be so stupid? What was I thinking, believing that? How did I go through 40 years of life confined to this way of thinking? Well, we think that way because we were taught to. We perceive the wrongs done to us because at that time, in that moment, that was all we could see. Getting older has shown me that you can change. You learn what you can change and what you can't. You learn that loving family, however you define it, warts and all, is worth it. Sometimes. Christian. Or family comes in many forms. Let's go there. He continues, even when you'd really rather sell your kids to the circus or your spouse. Mostly, though, getting older has shown me that there's more beauty in this world that can ever exist in another. Love is something that can be found in the most unexpected of places, and is something everyone deserves unconditionally. The truth of those two facts can never be taken from you. So when I do finally die of old age, I will not fear it. I will sigh and go to sleep with the memories of how I used my life to demonstrate beauty, love, and truth to others. Christian in St. Louis, thank you very much for the letter. Back to the phone, 770. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
I'm Austin, Seth.
Austin, thanks for calling the show, my friend. What's going on?
Hey, man. I think you've been reading my mind or something. You just about every one of these podcasts is like the exact same thing I've been thinking of that week.
Well, I've got the sight.
No,
I'm just kidding.
I just wanted to say, you're getting old when your back goes out and all you've done is take a nap.
When you wake up and you say, I must have slept wrong. Yeah, you're totally hosed. So how old are you, Austin? How old are you?
I'm 46.
Dude,
I'm 46.
You and I are just babes.
We actually talked a couple back in May. I called in. I'm the ex-preacher from Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, give me your perspective on aging, on getting older. I mean, give me what you got here, Austin.
Well, I definitely think you're 100% right that, as we get older, I think we start seeing things clearer because we do gain more experience and we, like you said, we just stop putting up with the bullshit. And
what do you think that's about, Austin? If you'll forgive the interruption. Do you think it's because we know that the days are ticking by and we all of a sudden realize life's too short to put up with nonsense, or is it something else?
No, absolutely. Matter of fact, I just went out and bought myself a new analog watch. For one very simple reason, because we never use watches for, wristwatches to check the time anymore, right? I mean, everyone uses their cell phone or their computer or whatever, but I purposely went and bought myself a watch to remind myself that we only have this life and this time right now to do something. We don't have any pie in the sky afterwards or another life or anything like that. We have today, right now, to do something with our life, and that time is ticking away. The more time we waste, the less time we have something to do. We have time to do something. So do you look back
at yourself when you were a young person, Austin, and shake your head at some of the crap you used to do? Do you look back at,
absolutely,
at the young Austin and go, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an advantage. I think when I was younger, I had an agnostic father and a non-religious mother. My form of rebellion was becoming ultra-conservative and going into the ministry and all that kind of thing. And so, I don't deal with some of the things that maybe you've dealt with your family about being an atheist. My family doesn't care. They've taken it all in stride. I find it's my friends that have dealt with it. But when I look back at that and I think of the years and years that I wasted with a philosophy that was a dead end. When you have a philosophy of, let's pray about it, as opposed to let's do something about it.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't regret all the mistakes. Because we all made a lot of mistakes and we continue. But many times those mistakes lead to a greater perspective, right? You learn from the experience, you pick yourself up, and you know better how to handle things the next time.
My rebellion stage was becoming conservative. So I wish I'd have gotten in more trouble.
Oh, really? You wish you had flipped that coin the other way, huh? That's awesome.
Well, I'm not talking about going crazy about it, but I wish that I had taken advantage of some of the things when I was younger and been, I wish there had been more atheists as outspoken as there are today.
Yeah, for sure.
Back 25 years ago.
Well, and I've got no problem encouraging young people to enjoy youth. There's a lot of older people, parents who look at their teenage kids and they're like, oh, Dad, you don't do this, don't do that, be in by 8. And I think, I don't throw them out into the meat grinder. There needs to be boundaries as long as they're living in your house. All of those things are true. But at the same time, geez, it's a celebration of being young. We were all there once. Allow them to make mistakes. Allow them to be young people. Allow them to do young people stuff. I wish sometimes that, the conservative family I had grown up in would have been a little more apt to allow us to be kids. They didn't understand dating very much. Why would you want to date when you're 16? You know, you're not even legally able to get married until you're this year. And I think to myself, that's not the point. It's about being attracted to somebody. It's about learning skills with the opposite sex. It's about going through the process of being a young person in love. It's an important step. And a lot of that I wish had been handled differently when we were growing up.
Going to that point right there, you know, I mean, that's the reason I wound up getting married at 18, because the Bible says that it's better to marry than to burn with lust.
Yeah.
I've been going back, and I found an old notebook of mine. It was an old sermon book, or the book that I used to use for writing my sermons down. And I've gone back through just this week and started going back through those and looking at all looking at all those sermons that I preached. And I even preached a sermon on this subject. It is interesting to go back and look and see how you changed from 15 years ago when I wrote that sermon to today, when there's no way I would be saying or doing those kind of things.
You have a richer perspective, a more nuanced perspective, because you are not a kid anymore. The years have helped you see this through a wider and clearer lens. And I think that has merit.
Yeah. And, you know, we just don't get surprised as much because we have experienced. And if we haven't experienced something exactly, we probably have a similar situation, if not the exact situation, to compare our reactions, our thoughts, our feelings to as we're older, as opposed to someone who's 20 who everything, or 25 even, where everything's brand new, you know, a first love or getting cheated on or something. You know, as you're older, you've been through those things. So there's very few things that it's the first time we're dealing with something anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Wise words, Austin. Well, I appreciate you listening and calling the show today, and we'll talk again soon, hopefully. All right.
All right, Seth. Thanks for taking my call again.
All right. Take it easy.
Have a good one.
You know, I never had kids. When I was married for 18 years, and my ex and I remain friends, which is something I'm very thankful for. But she and I, you know, we always decided that if we were going to have kids, it should be the desire of our heart, right? If you're going to have a child and raise a child, it should be because it is the desire of your heart, not because mom and dad want grandkids. That's not a reason to start a family. Or because society tells you that it's time to have a child. We just decided to take it a day at a time, a month at a time, a year at a time. And if that desire came, we would then move forward. But in all those years, we were very much career people, very independent people. And, but anyway, now at this stage in my life, I have sort of stepchildren, right? Natalie's got 2 kids, a couple of teenagers, and it has awakened something within me that I am tremendously thankful for. I've been given the opportunity to have sort of under my roof 2 precious people who I'm able to care for and provide security for, and to just be sort of an anchor for, and they light me up. I mean, I just love them. And but it's funny because had I had a child when I was married at 22. Right? You have a child and you're 23, 24, right? And you think you know everything. It would have been one of those things where I would have been hell-bent on making sure that their virginity was preserved until the day they stood at the altar before God and man and exchanged vows. And the consummation of the marriage was part of a God-ordained matrimonial thing. And you would be married forever and ever and ever, and it would be a lifelong commitment. And now I look at it, especially after all the shows we've done here, and we've done a lot of great shows on sex and sexuality and the secular perspective. And I looked at myself, and especially after I was talking to Marty Klein, he's a columnist at Psychology Today, and he was talking about how the median age for people who are getting married is actually going up. It's getting closer and closer to 30. But the age of sexual maturity is actually starting earlier. So all of those years in between, whether it's 14 and 30 or whatever, all those years in between, all that is the playground for premarital sex. Meaning that if you hold to a fundamentalist Christian doctrine and you believe that it's adultery unless you're married, there's a decade and a half where you have natural sexual urges, that if you have sex, you will then be told that you've committed a crime against God and man, and that you are broken. They used to have the True Love Waits campaign when I was growing up. It was an abstinence-only program, which, by the way, failed miserably. True love does wait. People would take a pledge. They'd take these vows, right? These kids. And I'm all for sexual responsibility. I'm not for teenagers just randomly going out and doing it. I'm just saying it was a different animal than we thought it was when we were in the church. And we were actually harming our children by handling it wrong. And I'll tell you, if I had a teenager at this moment and it was my child, I honestly think I would handle it differently. I don't think I would, in fact, I know I would not preach the abstinence message. I would preach the personal responsibility. Here's what it is. Here are the consequences. Don't take it lightly. Be safe. Understand it. Understand what it is and how it works, what's happening. And you know what gave me that perspective? Freaking 45 years of being alive. My perspective changed. I got older and I saw things were not all that everybody else sort of told me they were. And I went out and developed a worldview of my own. It took me a while, but I finally got smart and decided to go out and develop a worldview of my own. Instead of standing on somebody else's soapbox, I'm going to go build one of my own, using the elements that I find most palatable. By the way, I kind of grieve for those kids. They used to do what do they call them? New virgins, they would take the kids and have them pledge abstinence, but they knew that there were some kids who had already lost their virginity, and so they would have them take like a separate pledge, which was sort of becoming what they called a new virgin, right? You're actually a spiritual virgin. We're going to say the prayer of forgiveness, and we're going to start again. And God, can you imagine the struggles those kids went through? Jeez. Whatever. I'm sorry. I got way off on the bunny trail on that one. Got way off on it. It's just one of those things that's on my mind. I guess it relates to aging. I don't mind being a middle-aged guy. Do I miss my skinny waist? Yeah. Do I miss, having a neck? Yeah, occasionally, yes. Would I like to be up, to be able to be up 24 straight hours without getting tired? Yes. Would I like to be able to eat whatever I want, whenever I want? Yes. But I'll tell you what I don't want. I wouldn't want to go back and not have the perspectives that I have today and not have the people in my life that I have today. The Thinking Atheist wouldn't exist if I had started it if I had become an apostate that young. I wouldn't have known what I was doing. But I'd had a chance to develop a career and to develop communication skills and spend well over a decade as a broadcaster and a communicator and develop skills at writing and speaking on stage. And all of those decades played into what the Thinking Atheist is now. And you may not have joined the Thinking Atheist community or any other online free thought community 20 years ago. You might have gone another direction, you might have done another thing, but you're at a point in your life right now, wherever you are, whether you're 6 or 60, you're at a point in your life where it was right for you at the time. It's right for you now, and you're here, and I'm so glad you are. We talk about getting older. T.S. Eliot once said this. He said, I grow old, I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Maya Angelou once said that most people don't grow up. Most people age. They find parking spaces, honor their credit cards, get married, have children, and they call that maturity. What that is aging. The great Ray Bradbury once said this. The huge round lunar clock was a grist mill. Shake down all the grains of time. The big grains of centuries and the small grains of years, and the tiny grains of hours and minutes, and the clock pulverized them, slid time silently out in all directions in a fine pollen, carried by cold winds to blanket the town like dust everywhere. Spores from that clock lodged in your flesh to wrinkle it, to grow bones to monstrous size, to burst feet from shoes like turnips. Oh, how that great machine dispensed time in blowing weathers. The humorist Dave Barry wrote, "As you get older, you probably notice that you tend to forget things. You'll be talking with somebody at a party and you'll know that you know this person. But no matter how hard you try, you can't remember his or her name. This can be very embarrassing, especially if he or she turns out to be your spouse." Tom Ford once said this. He said, "Every day is one less day." Bill Cosby said, "Old is always 15 years from now." Andy Rooney, "It's paradoxical that the idea of living a long life appeals to everyone, but the idea of getting old doesn't appeal to anyone." The great Mickey Mantle once said, "If I knew I was going to live so long, I'd have taken better care of myself." George Bernard Shaw was quoted as saying, "You don't stop laughing when you grow old. You grow old when you stop laughing." Oscar Wilde once wrote that wisdom comes with winters. From Pink Floyd, Free 4 said, "The memories of a man in his old age are the deeds of a man in his prime." Bob Smith, "One of the many problems with aging is that you begin to think of yourself as a slob, because your birthday suit can never be cleaned or pressed, no matter how spotted or wrinkled it gets." Sylvia Townsend Warner was quoted as saying this, "It is best as one grows older to strip oneself of possessions, to shed oneself downward like a tree, to be almost wholly earth before one dies." What a bunch of crap. He who dies with the most toys wins. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm honestly all about creature comforts. But I think I understand what she was trying to say. It's honestly the people, it's the love, it's the support, it's the relationships, it's the memories that are the most valuable as you grow older. But at the same time, part of me thinks if you're in there busting ass for all of your youth, when you're a little bit older, you should be able to enjoy some good stuff. And some of that good stuff might be, I don't know. I'm in Oklahoma. For some people here, it might be a bass boat. "Honey, let's go down Bass Pro Shop and pick us up a bass boat. Something nice. We worked hard. We got some retirement money. We'll go down there to Keystone Lake and sit out there and fish for crappie." Or whatever it is that rings your bell. Some people want to travel. Knock yourself out. See the world. Buy an RV. Buy plane tickets. I don't know. Some people collect things because those collections give them joy. You want to collect, I've seen people collect spoons and teacups and mugs and thimbles and stamps. Somebody explain stamps to me. I mean, who opens a book of stamps and says, oh, yeah, ooh, catch your breath. That one there is from 1891. Yeah, it's in mint condition. Been laminated. It's worth $49. I mean, I don't get it. But if it blows your skirt up, knock yourself out. I had Ann. Wow, that's 2 Anns on the show today. Send me a message. She said, "I've long been a thinking atheist addict, and I would like the opportunity to say a few words. I think I qualify for the getting older title, being nearly 64. Ann, you're just a babe." She said, "I'm Australian and theoretically belong to the Church of England. I went to a Church of England girls' school, which is considered one of the best private girls' schools in Melbourne. We had prayers and hymns every morning and divinity lessons twice a week. We were told about missionaries and the wonderful work they were doing with the savages, etc. When we were about 14, we could take classes to be confirmed into the church. We were never evangelized, and there was no need for our family to be church people. It was actually all about the Australian class value of children going to a private school, which were all church-based. Our science lessons were science, and we were taught evolution. Our In our divinity lessons, we were taught that the Bible version of creation was an allegory, and that a day in Genesis could be considered as an era, not 24 hours. It worked. My family was completely secular, and I have no idea whether my parents were believers or not. We never talked about it. There was too much other interesting stuff to talk about. My parents were very intelligent and believed that we should find our own way with our spirituality. I used to try all the neighborhood churches, go to the local C of E fellowship clubs and Sunday schools, but I never got it. I thought that if I took the confirmation classes, I may understand. But no, it didn't happen. I had to be baptized to take the confirmation classes, so my wonderful parents got me baptized at the local Church of England, but that didn't take either. I hope this makes sense to you, but this is the way it was done here, and continues. Anyway, here I am, a complete atheist. I waited and tried to find out what it was that these other people were getting out of their religion, but it just didn't happen. I'd go to church, get my dad out of bed on Sunday morning to drive me, and see people kneeling and praying and think, how do they know what to pray? Or what do you pray for? One Sunday morning at church, I suddenly realized that I was just following the liturgy without feeling a thing, and was far more interested in looking at the boys in the congregation. I must say, I did enjoy going to the service called Evensong on Sunday evening, which was all sung and very beautiful. And so I gave up the search for God. Now, I've decided that if God actually existed and created us, we would know. We would know and feel God. Belief would not be an option. Well, actually, it is not an option because you just can't make yourself believe. You just do or don't. It's like believing in Father Christmas. One big issue I have is with sin. What is sin? I have no idea. I've never considered sex a moral issue because, as my father always said, it has to be the best thing in the world. Otherwise, people would do the best thing and people would cease to exist. I'm trying to understand your sentence, and let me look at it again. Because my father always said it has to be the best thing in the world. Otherwise, people would do the best thing, and people would cease to exist. I'll come back to it. Sometimes I wonder if all these rampant abstinence idiots have ever considered that they would not be here if it weren't for sex. All of you true love weight advocates are here because somebody was doing somebody somewhere, people. What do the Bible bashers mean when they talk about sinners repenting? Most people just go living their lives, looking after themselves and their loved ones, going to work, mowing their lawns, having fun with friends, and getting on with life. Where's the sin? My husband was brought up in an incredibly religious and restrictive household. No radio, no TV, no novels, no higher education, no pants for women, no short hair for women. And he saw the light and left the religion. Fortunately, his family accepted and have remained loving and supportive to us with never a word about religion. Anyway, to get to the point of all this, Anne says, I had a discussion with my husband yesterday about morals. I said to him that it had never occurred to me until I heard people talking about it on podcasts that people got their morality from Christianity and the Bible. I thought that morality just came from being human and not wanting to hurt other humans by lying, stealing, murdering, and all the numerous ways there are to be unkind. And he vehemently disagreed with me, stating that it all came from the Bible. I was astounded. He said that no matter where I got my morals, it was from the Bible. Maybe a grandparent or even further back, it hangs on, doesn't it, the religious upbringing? I feel that our morals do come from a feeling of empathy for others, and that's it. Your thoughts on morals? ? Yours with love and appreciation for your work, Anne. Thank you so much, Anne. One of my dreams in this world is to visit Australia someday. It's most of the traveling I've done. I did some overseas traveling when I was doing sort of missions work for Compassion International when I was in Christian radio. And then the rest of it has been like scuba. I'm an advanced open water scuba diver. Don't do it much anymore, but we would go on scuba trips, right? But I mean, I would love to be able to come and do like an Australia trip. I've never been to London. Always wanted to go there. You know, there's all these little places I've always wanted to visit. And I crave the opportunity, Anne, to come see that part of the world. I do want to have a guide because, as I understand it, pretty much everything you touch in Australia will kill you. And I would like to live a long life, which is the purpose of this show. The theme of this podcast is getting older. I would like to achieve that. Where do my morals come from? We actually have done several podcasts on this. And we did one recently. We did a podcast. I can't think of the title off the top of my head, but we did it here in the last few months. You can find it blogtalkradio.com. Just look for The Thinking Atheist, and we did a whole show. It's called Morality. That's right. It's called Morality. And it deals with biblical morality, the evolutionary model for morality. There's some references and links to Sam Harris's article called The Myth of Secular Moral Chaos, meaning that there's a notion out there thrown out by the morally superior religious that say that without God, there'd be pandemonium in the streets. Morality couldn't exist. There would be chaos in a secular world, which is absolute crap. It's actually one of the lazier arguments I've seen. When I speak in Denver here in 10 days, we're going to talk about some of the stuff that we are encountering from the religious. And one of the things I'm going to bring up is the morality argument. Where do you get your morals from? What a lazy argument. And I always say this, and I said this recently, forgive the repetition. I always say to believers, look, if you woke up tomorrow and you found absolute proof that God did not exist, let's say that it was handed to you and you saw without any question that God did not exist, would you immediately begin murdering and raping and pillaging and it would be mass chaos? Would your life just go to shit? And they always say, well, absolutely not. That's crazy. Well, you know, it's like the story of Abraham and Isaac, right? Christopher Hitchens addressed this story brilliantly back when he was alive. He was talking about the command, the edict from God for Abraham to prove his faith. Well, look, I want you to take your kid, drag him out to an altar. I want you to take a dagger and drive it into his heart to prove your loyalty. Right? This is a test. This is only a test. And when I was growing up, none of us stopped to say, who the hell would worship a God that commanded a father to execute his own child? Well, he didn't actually execute him. You know, God stayed his hand at the last minute. They sacrificed a ram instead, as if that makes a difference. Until that final second when the angel grabbed Abraham's hand before he plunged it into the beating heart of his own son, Abraham believed he was killing his own offspring, a precious human life, because God wanted to win the popularity contest, right? The book of Matthew says, hey, anyone who loves their son more than me is not worthy of me. You got to love me the most. I'm a jealous God. Who the hell would worship a being like that? Well, we did for many, many years. And we equivocated. Well, he's God. He deserves to be jealous. If anyone out there's only one being in the world who qualifies for jealousy, and it's Yahweh. Well, what a bunch of crap. There's another podcast I would like your husband to hear, if he would spare an hour. And tell him to go in skeptically. I want his walls up. I want his guard up. I want him to be skeptical, and I want him to listen to the show and then go back and check me on every scripture I present in whatever translation he wishes, within reason. Any mainstream Protestant, Bible, whether it's the KJV, the NIV, the New American Standard, the Living Bible, the Message Bible, whatever. It's called the Bloody Bible. And we go through the good book, Old and New Testament, and we look at the morality of Scripture. After that show is done, I want you to look your hubby in the eye and say, I pray you don't get your morals from the Bible. You know what? I'll make a note here that I'm going to put those shows in the description box because some others might be curious. The Bloody Bible. I'm going to put the morality and the Bloody Bible links in the description box of this show. They're worth a listen. And the material is provided by smarter people than me. I'm just sometimes I'm just the bullhorn. I'm just the one communicating it. I'm no Sam Harris for sure. And he does a tremendous job of defending secular morality, that morality does fit the evolutionary model. It benefits community. It benefits the species. It makes sense. And anyone who's objectively read the Bible had better see that morals do not come from the book of slavery, from the book of torture, from the book of rape, from the book of genocide, infanticide, when the rivers of blood are flowing. People being beheaded and women with their arms cut off, women being told they're worth half as much as a man. I'm sorry, you don't have a penis, you're worth half as much. Even the female slaves are worth half as much. Nice. By the way, women, shut your mouth. The Bible says that you are not qualified to instruct a man. Oh, it gets even better. Listen to the podcast. Trust me, you will be fascinated. And then drop me an email and let me know what happens. And hopefully your marriage will survive it. Hopefully your marriage will survive this little conversation. Area code 607. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hi, my name is John. I'm from upstate New York. And I've actually sent you an email before. I was the one talking about George Carlin.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. Forgive me. I get so very many letters and emails and Facebook messages. It's impossible to really keep up with them all, but I do remember that one. And how you wanted me to draw a circle around the importance, the influence that Carlin had as he drew sort of the white hot circle around religion, and especially in his final years. So I totally agree with you. His take on religion is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Mm-hmm. What else do you have for us today?
Well, on the subject of getting older, and I wanted to talk about like a good friend of mine that I used to have that unfortunately died back in 2009 of pancreatic cancer. And he, one would may consider a ripe age of, in his early 60s, and he was the exact opposite of what you may consider to be, the image of what people have when you get older, that cantankerous old man who, get off my lawn, you crazy kids. Yeah. That kind of thing. He was the complete opposite of that. He just absolutely enjoyed every aspect of life that he could, even when his health was dwindling towards the end. And I remember he had a conversation with me. He said, it's very easy when you get older to become more bitter, because in essence, getting older is watching more and more people leave. You have parents die, you have friends go away, and things change. And it's very easy to become embittered by that. But he said, I made the conscious choice that instead of being embittered by the loss of time, to become more thankful and enjoyable for it, for everything that is still around and for things that still can come. And so, it's not so living anymore, but still, it's full proof that, just because you get older doesn't mean you have to become the angry old person sitting, why do those kids have the music on so loud? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see what they were wearing? Oh, these kids today have no respect, that kind of thing. Yeah. You sit around all day and watch daytime television, and you hardly ever get out of the house, and before you know it, you find yourself speaking in mostly negativity. I told Natalie, we were having this conversation. I'm like, when I get old, I have no idea. I'm curious as to what I'm going to look like, first of all. The second thing is, I just want to be funny. Like, I don't want to be this cranky guy. I don't want to lose my mind either. I'd like to have my mental faculties, thank you very much. So I don't want to get crazy. Yeah. But I just want to be funny. One of those people that people want to hang around because you make their life better. Oh, let's go see Grandpa Seth.
I know. I know what you mean.
He's awesome. That kind of stuff.
There's one other question that I'd like to bring up with you on the aging and religion thing, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
To me, it seems, because it's fair to say that I've been pretty much a lifelong atheist since maybe the age of 6. And one thing that I notice is that religion certainly does, and you've covered this before, certainly does put the fear of death into you and when you're growing up. And it seems like religion really doesn't do much for people who are aging. It seems like, religion tells you the only thing as you get older you have to look forward to is to reunite with the people that you lost in heaven. But then that means that there's nothing for you to enjoy now, that the only thing you have left to hope for is the day you die. And I've just always felt that was sort of an odd perspective. Did you ever feel that way?
Well, I have a slightly different perspective, I think, that the church teaches heaven, and heaven can be a coping mechanism. It can be a way to alleviate a fear of death. Now, I'm amazed at how many people who believe in heaven are actually terrified of death. I'm amazed at the people. If you honestly believe in a place of paradise where you will live forever and be essentially a super person with a mansion and untold wealth and the color spectrum beyond anything the earth has ever seen, and you're reunited with all the best people in your life, and you get to listen to your favorite music every day. I mean, all of this amazing stuff that heaven's supposed to be. And the people who believe in this are the ones who quite often are the most terrified of death. They're the ones who are extra careful. They're the ones locking their doors and loading their handguns, I mean. So I think that heaven for them is a coping mechanism for a genuine fear of death. I think another trap that some of the religious fall into is... But it seems
that religion doesn't give... I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It seems that religion doesn't give anything other than that. When you reach a certain age, it seems that that's all you have to look forward to, and that there's nothing left for you on this earth to enjoy. And heck, even in your 60s, you can still enjoy Disney World. You know what I'm saying?
In your 80s, you can enjoy it. In your 90s, I think, look, there's another problem I have with religion, and this is a little off topic, is that, quite frankly, they will teach the heaven theology, and they will make it an excuse to be a little bit flippant about this life. That pisses me off.
Right.
They'll say, you know what? I heard there was a Christian artist who died in a plane crash in 1982. His name was Keith Green, and he was doing a live album. I forget the name of the album, but he was talking about heaven. And he actually said, and I'll never forget it, he said on the album, he said, you know what? I mean, this earth is amazing, but compared to heaven, this is like living in a garbage can, man. And I thought, this is the mentality.
Wow.
What it is you're always looking to the next life instead of being focused here. So, on here we have dominion over the earth. We can chew up all of our natural resources. We can be a little flippant about what it is that we do, because whatever we do is only going to be temporary. One day, God will come back. He will rapture his children. There will be a new heaven, a new earth. There will be paradise forever. And so none of the stuff that happens here really matters. And I think that kind of teaching makes you flippant about what are genuinely important matters. I mean, this is the only planet we got, and I'm not I'm not an extreme environmentalist, but I have come to a point in my life when I get angry at how just dismissive many people in the church are about things like, climate change and pollution and all these other things when, maybe we should stop and realize that this is it. There ain't a new earth. There's just earth. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, to that mentality, it's very much, who cares about this when we got, the Golden Gate waiting for us, when the bell tolls.
God's going to come eventually and he's going to sweep up. So, hey, party on. Just crank up the music and trash the place, people, because Jesus is coming back and he's going to have a Swiffer and a Kirby, and he's just going to clean it all up, and it's going to be new. It's going to be amazing. Dude, I got to move on. Thanks for a great call, and thanks for listening. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, take it easy. Now, I'm not saying that all religious people are like, screw the planet. I don't think that's necessarily the case. But I'm amazed at how often they skip over the importance of dealing with things in the here and now because they're always focused on the hereafter, which I find tragic. You see people who live decades of their lives in preparation for something that there's no evidence of. They spend their lives decades and decades and decades. It's like that joke where the one little child said to his mom, he said, "Mom," he said, "why is that little old lady over there reading her Bible all the time?" And Mom said, "Well, she's an old person now and she's studying for her final." And that's kind of what it's like. You're always studying for the final. Well, what if there is no final? What if this is it? Well, you've spent your whole time essentially preparing for something that will never happen. You're like the doomsday preppers. You ever watch that show? I've seen a few episodes. By the way, it's fascinating. And there's some of those places I think it'd be cool to live in. Did you see the ones who went in and they took an old missile silo, underground missile silo, and they totally tricked it out. And they've got fencing and all this other stuff on the top, out on top of the actual land, but under the earth, this hugely secure missile silo. And they went in and they totally tricked it out. They have all these tunnels. It's like a big hamster cage. All these tunnels lead to rooms, and they've got furnishings and television. They've got all the stuff. It's completely self-sustained. They've got food for years, non-perishable food items. They have all this stuff. And I looked at Natalie and I'm like, oh, I could totally live in one of those things. How awesome would that be? And she looked at me like I was out of my mind. No windows? I don't need windows. We'll just pop the hatch, honey. We'll just look out. You'd live in a tube. It's not a tube. It's a silo, baby. Come on, imagine what parties it'd be like. You'd invite your friends over, just give them the doomsday code. They could open up the barbed wire fence and they could come in. Oh, this is how my mind works. But do you think about the doomsday preppers? Now, I'm all about being prepared. I'm not trying to say don't ever be prepared. Don't, expect the best, prepare for the worst, right? I get that. What makes me crazy is there are people who are so conspiracy-minded that they will spend their entire life digging a hole in the ground to protect themselves from the oncoming nuclear holocaust or whatever. And one day they're going to look up and they're going to be 70. And decades of their life, all the relationships they might have had, all the travels they might have experienced, all the skills they might have learned, all of the life experiences that they might have accumulated on their short tenure on this planet, they're all gone. They're all gone because these people spent the whole time digging a hole to prepare for doomsday. Oh, and then at 78, they pass away. Well, congratulations, you got 8 years. There's so many people. It's like people who stow away, and I'm all about saving money. And there are always people who take what I say and run with it in the wrong direction, so I always have to qualify. It's like people, I am all about being a good steward of your finances, investing and having a savings account and being responsible. But I know of people who will spend their whole freaking life taking every dime. You'll find this is especially the case in the people who came out of the Great Depression, who have that Great Depression mentality, where money was like non-existent. Well, when they began to receive anything, a paycheck of any kind, they just squirreled all that stuff away. They had them in accounts locked away in the attic in a chest. They put them in bonds and stocks and all these other places, and they're gone. They're never touched. And all of a sudden, these people wake up one day and they're 80, and the money they could have spent to buy a ticket to Melbourne, Australia, to go see what it's all about, to take a cruise, to buy a nice house, their dream home together. I don't know, get a sports car, whatever, to spend on the grandkids, right? To give to charity, to do something with, something other than sit and collect dust. And what happens is they spend their whole life just putting all this stuff aside, and then they die. And it goes to people who probably, in many instances, won't really have the perspective of, earning it. Wouldn't it be better in some ways to have some money set back and to have a nest egg and to have that safety net? Sure. But to also invest in your own autumn and winter years. Baby, we worked hard, we played hard, we've done a lot to get to this moment. The kids are grown, the house is paid for. Let's make some memories. Let's travel from coast to coast. Let's go see some of the sights we've always wanted to see. Let's take a shitload of photographs. Let's buy that thing that you've always wanted that you thought would be amazing. Let's start that collection. Let's do a project, a task. I've always wanted to paint. I've always wanted to film. I've always wanted to do this or that. Let's try it. You only live once. Wouldn't that be amazing? I think that should happen more and more often. My soapbox. Last call, area code 613. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast.
Hello,
Who's
Seth.
this?
How are you tonight?
Who's this?
Hello, it's Jim.
Jim,
in
glad you called, my
Rockland,
friend.
Ontario.
What's going on?
Well, I guess I'm that older atheist that you're talking about for tonight's show.
What kind of
I'll
older
be
atheist?
61 next.
Now, are you happy and funny, or are you like cranky and crazy? Which one are you?
Well, I'm not cranky and crazy. By the way, I'll be 61 next month.
You're just a...
So that's what...
It's all...
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm not cranky or crazy. I never really was, how can we say, bounced around the room like a brainless ape.
So you haven't been hugely active. You're not one of those grab life by the horns types of people. That's not your temperament, right?
Depends how you look at it. For example, I spent like 8 years in the Reserve Army.
Well, it sounds to me like you've
Canada.
had some adventure in your life. Doesn't sound like you've been living in a cave, just taking away the time.
That's right. Had a chance because of my hobby as an amateur radio operator and also being in the telecommunications milieu. Got a chance to go to Africa for a while. And as a matter of fact, that still is a real problem for me because where I was in Dakar, Senegal. And I don't know whether you know it or not, but Senegal is primarily a Muslim country. But I spent my time there in Dakar, but I see how people think of Muslims, particularly after 9/11. And I'm looking at it and I'm seeing these are two different things that I'm looking at. How do I explain this? For one thing, well, prior to me going to Senegal, the only thing I knew about Islam was what I had read like in National Geographic or in the papers and everything like that. And also had a number of friends who had done some work in Saudi Arabia and setting up their telecommunication systems there back in the late 70s, early 80s. So that was all I knew about. It looked like as if it was very strict, no booze, women had to be dressed up, stayed in the house. I went to Senegal, completely different thing. I saw like liquor being sold in outdoor stalls and everything like that, and I just couldn't imagine it. The fact that I was nominally a Christian, it didn't bother anybody. Women weren't dressed up, wearing burqas. You did see the odd burqas back then, but certainly the vast majority of women didn't work there. So I'm still having a hard time coming to terms as to the way Muslims are often portrayed within the media here in Canada and, of course, in the United States.
Well, I'm not ready to let the Muslim countries off the hook, my friend.
No. Okay. I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you there. But I think what we see is as a result of Wahhabism, that very strict fundamentalist sort of religion that you get coming out of Saudi Arabia. But you look at other countries, other Muslim countries, they aren't that way.
Well, I absolutely agree. You look at many Muslim families here, even in the United States, and they are practicing Muslims to a degree, but they're cultural Muslims. They aren't necessarily holding directly to the Quran, all that stuff. And they love and respect women, sure. But I'm saying that Islam as a religion does not respect women. And I'm also trying to tie this into our theme of getting older. Is it that you got older and began to see it in a broader context, or where are you going with me?
Yeah, I saw it in a broader context. I took somewhat of an early retirement. The other thing here that has affected me as well is a few years ago, I took retirement the earliest moment that I could. And so I went back to university and got my degree.
At what age did you get your degree?
59.
So you were 59 when you finally got the diploma.
I actually even started my master's program, but I got sick, so I had to drop out. But I'm hoping to get back in soon.
I salute you. You know, I think that is amazing. I have a buddy who I think he was in his 30s, right? At a time when it's amazing when you're a kid, people are asking high school students what they want to do with the rest of their lives. Like,
right.
How many people when they're 16, 17, 18 have the first clue what they want to do with the rest of their lives? Well, he was in his 30s.
Well, that's it.
He was in his 30s, and he went home to his wife, and he said, I think I'm going to go to dental school. He'd never taken any medicine or anything like that. And starting in his mid-30s, he put himself through dentistry.
God.
And started his practice in his freaking 40s. And I look at that guy and I go, that's how it's done. Like, it's not too late. You're not too long in the tooth. Pursue your dream. Set a goal and achieve it. And that's exactly what you did. Congratulations on your degree. I wish you the best of health. And I'm sure you're a young, spry 61, man. I'm glad you're part of the family out there. Thank you so much for calling.
Thanks a lot, Ben.
My final email is from an anonymous sender who asked to remain anonymous, and I will honor that, but I thought the letter was a nice way to sort of finish the show. It goes like this. I see you're doing your next podcast on the concept of getting older. As a young person of 18 right now, this is something I've thought about a lot, especially since I became an atheist about 6 or 7 months ago and have had to completely rethink what aging and death means. I've spent endless hours thinking about how I want to spend my life and what kind of person I want to become. I look at a lot of the adults around me, and I'm always curious if they are who they wanted to be. It seems that a lot of people get into their cozy habit of working from 9 to 5 every weekday, and watching TV or reading the newspaper from 5 to 9 when they get home, then rinsing and repeating every week for most of their lives. Suddenly, most of their lives are gone, and they still haven't finished writing that book, still haven't run a full marathon, still haven't visited Niagara Falls, or whatever. As a young adult right now, that terrifies me, that it is very possible I could end up like that. And then, of course, there's the thought that we could die before we get old. People die all the time for the stupidest and most random reasons. If I hold things off too long, I could easily die just as so many others do, and die an unfulfilled, incomplete human being. I don't see what I would truly be if I never got to write that book, produce those albums, or leave something behind that would touch people of the future. If I died today, I'd probably disappear from all human knowledge within a century or so, and I would never be mentioned by a history book. I don't want to die that way. I do not care how I die or in what way, as long as I got to accomplish something meaningful for whatever meaning can accomplish. Religion gives us the excuse to hold off on these things of meaning, since we're going to live forever anyway. And heaven will be better and richer than earth anyway. But without religion, where this life is all we have, and when it ends, we will not exist anymore, it is far more terrifying to hold things off. It absolutely terrifies me that as I get older, there is permanently less time than there was before to create the things I want to leave behind. This is doubly true as when I become a full adult with a full-time job with a wife and kids, that will leave even less time to do the things I love and make myself into who I want to be before I die. Let me stop you there. Hang on. Just hang on. I see 2 red flags. First of all, if you spend your whole life being terrified about the time that slips away and there's nothing you can do about it, you're actually working against yourself, man. You can sit around and obsess about death, or the fact that time is slipping away, or you can get to it. Go out and make some memories and have some amazing stuff in your life. The second thing is that if your wife and kids are not included in that sentence where you want to have time to do the things you love, why do you have a wife and kids? You're not societally obligated to go out and get married and produce children, right? Unless it's the thing you love. And if having a spouse and children is not something that is the desire of your heart, why the hell are you doing it to begin with? I think you're seeing it incorrectly. Right? You say, when I become a full adult with full-time job and a wife and kids, that'll leave even less time to do the things I love. Well, it just might be that your family is one of the most loving. Your family may be one of the things you love the most, that brings you the most joy and fulfillment. And if you are not wired in that way, why in the world are you starting a family? Back to the letter. I will die someday, and I recognize that it's not going to be too long from now. There are studies that show that our perception of time starts to become faster as we get older. Where an hour is a long time for a child, it's not a long time for a teenager. Where a year is a long time for a teenager, it is not a long time for an elderly man. Our lives are composed of individual moments with absolutely nothing in between, and each moment we waste is gone forever. We will all experience a final moment in which we will exist, where after the moment is done, we will no longer exist, and it is a personal battle for each of us to make it as if we have existed in this world when we no longer do. It is our responsibility to make the world a better place to exist in for those who do not yet exist. I believe if there is any sort of meaning in this life, that is it. I do not believe that each of us dedicating our lives to paying the bills and getting by will accomplish this. On this we agree, my friend. What will affect people is reaching out to others who are in need, making beautiful art, writing meaningful books, teaching people how the universe works, developing science and technology, and eliminating confusion and corrupted thinking wherever it may exist. And maybe right now, for us atheists, fighting for what we believe in is of the utmost importance, to show people that we're not crazy for denying the existence of God. I believe that you've made great strides in this particular battlefield, much in the way that individuals such as Dawkins and Hitchens have done. Your work towards enlightening us and showing us that we are not alone. For that, I thank you. As an atheist in a setting where most others I know are devout Christians, you certainly help my sanity, which definitely improves my world. It makes all the difference. What you do with the Thinking Atheist really matters, especially in this day and age. And I'm doubtful you'll be forgotten. Thank you very, very much. We're all going to be forgotten. There will eventually be a day, there may be a day, Shakespeare's going to be forgotten. In a million years, whatever. It's important, I think, to try to leave a footprint, to try to have the kind of life that matters in some way. But it doesn't have to be an earth-shattering, people will remember me for 1,000 years type of way. Those are pretty rare. But I think the fight that you and I are making today against the craziness of superstition, against the damage it does, is going to make things better for those who come after. It's going to be something that benefits the species. Is that hubris? I hope not. The hard stand we take today, the fight we make today in the political arena against the indoctrination of young children, against the falsifying of history or the writing of bad history or the tainting of science or all the crap that the William Lane Craigs and the Ken Hovens and the Eric Hovens and the Ken Hams and all those people are out there spouting at full volume the fight we are making today against it. Well, it's going to make an impression. They may not know your name. People may not say your name. But you'll matter. With thousands of people in this community, including myself, they're not going to remember my name. That's not the point. I see my role as kind of an encourager. I'm a communicator, yes. I want to help people who've been down the same road that I traveled, yes. I want to learn from this community, and I want to better myself every single day, yes. But it ain't about me. And the people who join me in this fight against superstition, we're not doing it so one day somebody will scribble our name in a history book. We're doing it because a real difference will be made, even if no one remembers what our initials are in 100 years. And that has meaning and it has merit. Look, I'm not an expert on this kind of stuff. I'm certainly not Dr. Phil or whoever. I'm not an advisor in this way. But I will say I do have an opinion on the subject, and I think you need to see it with different eyes, man. You see the preciousness of life. That's awesome. You have a great bead on how so many people just punch a time clock and exist rather than living. I wish so many people could see what you see when you look out there. And it's so important. You know, what is that saying that says, do something that scares you at least once a week, right? Find something that terrifies you and try it. Well, you may not go that far, but at least bust out of the mundane. Grab a piece of life you never had before. Try it out. Even if you hate it, you got a great story to tell at parties. Say the words you got to say. Make a difference. Take a stand. Go out there and fight a fight. Fight for what you believe in. Stop sitting on your hands and watching the seconds tick by. Right? You can either act or you can watch. Well, I think I'd like to act. And I have a feeling that the tens and tens and tens of thousands of people in the Thinking Atheist community are the same way as I am. That whether somebody knows who we are in 100 years or not, who gives a shit? We just want to try to help fix it. Whatever I can do. We're like the guys in the pit crew. You know, the Indy 500 drivers are blowing around the track at crazy speeds. And they come in and we're sort of trying to fix the vehicle. Change the oil and change the tires and make sure there's no problems and try to make it better for the next lap. No one knows our name. Nobody has the first clue who we are, but we matter. The race would not continue without us. That, in my opinion, is the lens through which you should see your role. And I hope for a long, happy, productive, and yes, meaningful life in front of you. And I wish you all the best. Coming up next week on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast, I'm going to have a conversation with my former boss in Christian radio. We are going to have a discussion about God. I've called the show A Clash from the Past, and it's coming up next Tuesday night. We'll see you here on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Take care.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.